Hey, Dr. Brian McKay, Core Health Darien. Now, what we're talking to you today about is tight hamstrings. Everybody's sitting down at work these days, working from home, working in non-ergonomic chairs, dealing with life as it is, and everybody's complaining about tight hamstrings. But one of the reasons, and mostly everybody says they have chronically tight hamstrings, and I'm talking about people who are, semi-athletic, stretch. Why are the hamstrings tight? Well, it's not always the hamstrings. Let me tell you something. I wish it, well, not that I wish, it's just that the nature is what I find is, yes, you can have tight hamstrings, but the hamstrings help support the glutes, which help support muscles in the back. And chances are the muscles in the back aren't doing their job, making the biceps femoris, semitendinosus, and semimembranosus, which are your hamstrings, much more tight than they should be. It's like a chain. We call it the kinetic chain. If you got a problem in the hamstrings, you better check the foot, and you better check all the way to the lower back and the abdominals on the anterior side. So let's go over the hamstrings primarily four muscles: biceps femoris, one muscle, two heads. Then you also have the semimembranosus and semitendinosus. The biceps femoris, we're talking about the back of the leg, what people traditionally know to be the hamstrings. So on the outer portion, the back part of your leg to the side, is going to be the biceps femoris, and on the inside portion, the semitendinosus and semimembranosus. And those your basic hamstring stretches can really, if that is the issue, well, you just got to stretch. And people aren't stretching enough as it is. Who's got the time? There's a lot more bike riding, which is putting, it's aggravate. It can aggravate that as well if you're sitting at home doing work and having some Peloton issues. You might, or you're not Peloton issues, but you're feeling more tightness in the legs. All you got to do is throw the leg up, one leg at a time onto the saddle. Get a good stretch. Don't bounce. Just go into it. Hold it. When you're done, go a little bit further, hold for 30 seconds, go a little bit further, hold another, hold it for 30 seconds, go a little bit further, and just keep going further. You do not want to bounce when you're doing it. You're going to confuse the muscle. So it's not a good idea to bounce when you're doing stretches. Just do a sustained stretch. Now, say you got your left leg up there first, turn the foot to the side, and try to bend left and right. Okay? You should be able to stabilize. The height of the seat is probably enough for you to do a good job on. So this is for your Peloton cyclist or Soul Cycle, whatever your pleasure is with tight hamstrings and home exercising equipment. Now, let's delve into the muscle groups that I like to check out. Well, there's a group of muscles called your multifidus. Multifidi is plural if you studied Latin like I did many, many years ago. And the multifidus muscle, they're a big player in vertebral spinal stability. And what happens is it connects on the transverse process. So say you have, let's talk about L4, L5. So the L5 transverse process, the multifidus muscle, you have one on each side. So there's going to be a bunch of them up and down the spine. The multifidus muscle at L5 attaches to the spinous process, which is in the center of L4. And on the other side, you have the left transverse process of L5, and that muscle attaches. So it allows for, it's basically a big stabilizer. But they get kind of gunked up, okay? And it's these muscles, they run. There's other muscles that run in the same direction, like the erector spinae muscle groups. So you don't hear about these muscles. Actually, you never hear about these muscles for the most part. So if you're listening here and you're on Jeopardy, give me some credit when you win, when you start naming the muscle groups. So the erector spinal muscles they run parallel to the spine. So the multifidus are a little bit further out, but again, you got some really finite movements that they do. And so the muscle groups of the erector spinae group are the iliocostalis, iliolongissimus, and the spinalis. And they run parallel on the outside, and they extend all the way up from the lower back to the base of your skull. So it goes all the way pelvis to the back of your head. And these muscles get gunked up. I mean, have you ever heard anybody? I mean, sure, you go to the gym and you do curls and presses and squats, and well, hopefully you're doing all that stuff. And by the way, squats are a very good exercise. They may suck, but they're to do, but they're very good. And you're better off doing a deeper squat. If you don't know what a squat is, then ignore me on this one. I'm not going to go into what a squat exercise is, but you're better off doing a lighter weight and going deeper into the muscle group because then, and a slow, steady. You're not going to strengthen these muscles the way you want to strengthen a pec or a bicep, or tricep. It's just not that way. These are more for when you wake up in the morning, you're kind of stiff. These are good muscles. They're very good muscles to stretch, but they're not that easy. I happen to use a technique called trigenics where I go in and release these tissue. So it's kind of a, you know, you may need to see a chiropractor, but then again, you can't just go to anybody because they don't pay attention to these muscle groups or test for them and just get the adjustment. You're going to get some relief because the large diameter afferent nerves get the control of pain in the back will get reset when you do the adjustment, not so much when you do this particular treatment. So let's go back. The function of the erector spinae is bilateral contraction, extends it, and that's bilaterally extension where you would go backwards. And then since you have one on each side, it also is for unilateral, meaning one side, either left or right, not both, because you can't go left and right to the side. Lateral flexion, okay? So the muscles on the right control lateral flexion on the right. Muscles on the left control lateral flexion on the left. So that's a big, it's important to know about these things. And the erector spinae and the multifidus kind of work. They work hand in hand. That's the way you got to look at it. So the multifidus, a little bit further out, you're gonna have to make sure that you're working the multifidus too, which is not the easiest muscle to work. Let me explain. So let's get back to really we hit on the erector spinae, but the multifidus muscle, again, it goes from transverse process below, which is these wings, and it goes to spinous above, which is the dead center. If you're gonna feel that, first of all, if you're way overweight, you may not feel it. But here's what you're gonna do is you go put your hand on your back. You find those bumps that go down the center of your spine. And it's easy enough if you can reach around and touch your lower back and feel it. Immediately to your right, immediately to your left is where you would find the the belly of the multifidus muscle or multifidi. You go in there, you can poke around. It's probably a site of pain as well. So sometimes just releasing the vertebra is going to take the tension off that muscle. I don't. I like to do is again. I use a method called trigenics, which allows me to go in and release that because if I release the tension on the spinous process, the transverse process, I now have a more mobile lumbar motor unit. So how does this tie into tightness in the hamstrings? Multifidus is so the erector spinae group, multifidus, all very close to the spine. We also have the quadratus lumborum, which I'll touch on in a minute. But then those are above. Those are your low back muscles. They're not big muscles, and they're not something you can really easily exercise. I do see some machines at the gym where you can, lock your body and turn sideways, right and left, and that's those are good if you have it at the gym. It's not a common thing. I happen to have it at my gym, and it was taken out of action for COVID because of social distancing, and let's hope the COVID is a thing of the past. Hope everybody's happy with their shots if you can get them. But let's now the QL, the quadratus lumborum. It's kind of in the muscle. The QL is like it's in the front and the back. And what it does is if you go put your hands on your hips, out like above, like out on the side, and then come in towards the spine. That's the quadratus lumborum. And they call it a posterior abdominal wall. It's deep in the abdomen. It goes close to the iliopsoas, which is a major trunk flexor, and the iliacus as well. It's a very deep muscle. So, in order to work that one as a whole, again, a trigenics method that releases that. So, if these muscles aren't working, it's going to force your glute max to work harder. And people don't, if you poke around the glute max, you may have some tender points there. But the glute max is then, is above your biceps femoris, and your semitendinosus and membranosus. So those are the areas you got to look at when you have back pain, chronic back pain. And if you're ignoring those muscles, you're not going to do a good job of getting that release. And it's kind of hard. If you find a deep tissue person, that would be important to do. I mean, again, as a chiropractor, would say everything's related to chiropractic, but the chiropractor is not going to pay attention to these muscle groups. Then you're kind of pissing in the wind. So you really don't want to do that either. So you got to get someone who understands the muscles, how the nerves work, and how the bones work. And if you just seen a chiropractor does the bones, you're going to get some relief. Like I'm not going to throw my colleagues under the bus, but you'll get a lot better results. And then also too is your stretching is going to become a lot more effective. Now another thing is when you have, say a tight glute max, biceps femoris, semitendinosus, semimembranosus, and these are tight. A lot of times you're not going to pay attention to the muscles that run down the front of your leg, which is the rectus femoris. And the rectus femoris is the antagonistic muscle group to the glute max. So you got to make sure you're testing the glute max, rectus femoris, and to some extent, if you're having knee pain in addition to low back pain, then you're going to have to make sure that you're checking the iliopsoas and the iliacus. All right, I know I hit you with a lot of information, but basically, if you're having chronic back pain and you have tightness in the hamstrings, a, a deep soft tissue. If you go in for the loving massages, you're kind of wasting your time. So, recommend number one: find a chiropractor who understands that these muscles are involved, knows how to work them. Get a deep tissue workout with someone who is good. Deep tissue. I mean, it's going to hurt, and you know what? I'm sorry if it's going to hurt. If it hurts when you get these things released, but at least you know that the person found, um, you found where it's working. If I go find a tendon that's painful, there's a reason it's painful. It may not be clinically painful until I palpate it because different muscles have different innervations. So a motor muscle, the sensory nerves are motor nerves, and if the sensory nerves not involved, you may not have pain, but the motor aspect can be a problem there anyhow. All right, Dr. Brian McKay, Core Health and Darien. Now, why we have developed what's called the Back Pain Project is basically to address tough low back cases. Again, if you want to come in and see me as a chiropractor, that's great. Um, the work is much more involved. Um, Obviously, it's not cheap, but super effective. And there's a whole host of other things we do for the Back Pain Project. Um, we use radial pulse shock wave to work these muscles, in addition to the trigenics. Uh, Laser is a good one. Laser is really good. Unfortunately, your insurance company does not pay for laser, which is why healthcare, solid resolution, a good resolution, is going to cost you money. I mean, if you they just don't cover it. It's one of these things. It's not been proven to their satisfaction. But let me tell you something. You fire up the adenosine triphosphate, the ATP, in the muscles with using laser. It's like photosynthesis. Muscles need energy. If your muscle is gunked up with lactic acid, which is the byproduct when you break down glycogen, which is muscle fuel, you're going to have pain, but you're also going to have a dysfunctional muscle. When you're talking about tiny muscles that are not even the size of your pinky, there's not a lot of room for getting that muscle all gunked up with lactic acid. Lactic acid, if somebody goes and digs into your shoulders after sitting at your desk all day, your workstation, you know what lactic acid kind of feels like when it gets in, someone digs deep. So, advice: tight hamstrings. Obviously, stretch them. More stretching, and then more stretching. But also, too, is see somebody who knows what the hell they're doing. Have a great day. Let's hope this pandemic is over with, and I hope you got your shot, and I hope you're going to feel a little bit better, or at least you're going to have more knowledge. When you go in, when I got a patient telling me muscle groups, I know I got a good patient who's all ready to go, and I don't have to sit there and explain the importance of just not getting them out of pain. I have to rehabilitate certain muscle groups, and thereby doing a better job. So get educated, get yourself better, do some stretching, enjoy the day. Spring ahead, fall back. Don't be too tired tomorrow. It's the first full day at work, and have a great day. Dr. Brian McKay, Core Health and Darien for the Back Pain Project. Adios.